Hello friends and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Deepa Robbins from DeeZinesByD, and today I have a very labor intensive card for you, but I do guarantee you it all pays off in the end. So what I want to do is show you a few different methods to put ink on your die cuts. When you're doing a lot of die cutting like I'm going to be doing today, it's kind of hard to find all the different papers that are going to match. So what I tend to do is cut everything out on white cardstock, and then I add color to the white cardstock. Now in previous videos, you might have seen me actually color my cardstocks with my ink pads first, but when you do that, you have to let them dry completely. And I was really just going at this and I didn't want to stop and let things dry. So this was a different way that you could add the ink to your white cardstock to create all of these beautiful die cuts in this Christmas bouquet that I'm going to be making today. So as you can see, I have a wide array of products that I'm going to be using, or dyes specifically. I'm using the Spellbinders Layered Blooms and Christmas Blooms. So these are their two bloom set that they have. The Altenew Craft a Flower, the Dendrobium Orchid and Daffodil, and the Layered Floral Elements from Altenew as well, and also the Sizzix Funky Festive Dyes. Now, in particular, I'm going to be showing you how to stretch your dies and make them work for you. So the first set that I'm going to be using is the Craft a Flower Daffodil set by Altenew. Now, I'm not actually producing daffodils. What I wanted were poinsettias, but I don't have layering dies for a poinsettia. Hint, hint, Altenew, please come out with that next year. That'd be great. But I'm actually just going to use the first 3 or 4 layers of this daffodil to create just a nice big flower. It doesn't look like a poinsettia, but it's as big as one, and it's going to take up that space on the card that I need with the amount of red that I need. So after cutting all the layers out of white cardstock, I'm going to start adding some ink. So one way I do this is I use my washi tape. You can use any type of low-tack tape, and I just took out like a piece of it, a long piece, and I'm going to be attaching all of these white die cuts onto this piece of tape. And I've added 2 pieces of tape on the edges so I can tape it down to something. So in this case, I've taped it down to a piece of scrap paper, and I've attached the first 3 flowers for the first layer, and I'm using Altenew Rouge ink with my blending brushes to add the ink to my white cardstock. Now I'm sorry my camera kind of moves around a bit because it's attached to my table, but you can see that it adds the ink in such a nice, light, artistic type way. And I can also basically gather my ink in one area of the die cut more than the other. And because you're basically adding the ink to the edges as well, you get those little bits of darker bits on the edges, which is what I wanted. Now I'll go ahead and set this up for the next layer, and I'll add the ink in the exact same fashion. So in this case, what I really wanted to do was just have that variation of ink color. I didn't want it to be one solid color throughout that piece of cardstock or that die cut, because if I wanted that, all I really needed to do was add the ink to my cardstock, color my cardstock ahead of time, and then cut that out. This it makes it a little bit more artistic and gives it that bit of color variation that I wanted. And I'm concentrating most of that red into the center of that flower, so on the edges, it's a little bit lighter. In the end, I ended up using the Altenew Rouge, Crimson, and the Velvet, but I have 4 layers. So for the last layer, which are these little pieces here, I used the Velvet again, but I just added that ink to these tiny little pieces with a lot more pressure on my brush and just did it over and over so that I got a darker color, so it would create that difference in color on my layer die cut. So as I said, I'll just build up that color on those little pieces. Now, as I said, I wanted the color to be darker in the center and go lighter towards the outside. But these little pieces that I'm going to be adding to the layered flower are the darkest, and they're going to be on the outer edges. So that's why I also didn't bother adding too much color to the outer edges of the first 3 layers. So you can see the color is different. It's darker. So that works perfectly fine. Now I have my Artist Tack dry adhesive sheets, and this is actually, it's a lifesaver when you're doing a lot of die cutting and adhering like I'm doing today. Because I'm using layered dies, this comes in handy. I can stick all my die cuts onto that sheet and attach them in layers without having to mess around with too much glue. Now, someone asked me about this before, and I actually bought this off of Amazon. And it's actually really cost effective. I can't remember the exact same price, but I will link this in my blog, which is linked in the description of this video. And basically, it has a bunch of sheets in it. I can't remember how many, if it's 20 or 15 or something. And I bought mine like maybe not a few weeks, sorry, many months ago. And I do a lot of die cutting and I use this a lot. And I still have a fair amount left. So don't use one sheet and throw it away. There's still lots of stickiness on there. So I tend to use it for more than one product, one sheet for more than one product. So it lasts a good long time. So now I will just continue to put this together, and I'm using my score tool there to kind of just burnish that from the back so that it sticks permanently. And now I can add those final little tiny pieces. And in order to do this, the best thing I would say to do is to look at the guide that comes with the set. So this shows me exactly how I have to do it. So I'll line up my die cut exactly like it shows me on the image, and then sort of identify which little piece I have and on which petal it goes. And this just makes it easier for me to make sure it goes on the right one. Most times when I'm lazy, I just kind of stick it wherever, and it still works. It really is a bit of it has give, you know. You don't have to make it exactly like how it is on the picture. Some people are a little more of a perfectionist, and they want to make sure that it's exactly like the picture, but I guarantee you no one's going to notice. If you really don't want to follow it and you just don't have the time, just stick it anywhere that you want, especially little pieces like this. It works fine. So as you can see, I didn't add the center to the daffodil. So that's how that flower works as a kind of makeshift poinsettia. Even though it's not a poinsettia, it kind of has the look and it takes up that amount of space that I wanted. So the next method you can use is to do some die cut inlay. So I keep the negative space for all of my die cuts, and for the orchids, this is how I'm going to put them together. I put some washi tape on the back, and then I'll basically set all of those little die cut pieces back in to the cardstock where it originally was before I cut it. Then I'll select my ink of choice, and then I'll add color to it. So again, I'm not wanting to add a solid layer of color. I want a variation in the deepness and lightness of the color on the die cut. So for these, I'm actually adding that yellow more specifically to the center, just like I did with the other one, and letting it kind of fade out into more of a lighter yellow or a whiter yellow on the edges. And this is what makes it really nice. You can do this with one color, and you could even use more than one color. So you could get two colors on here, and it just helps you mix the colors, which is harder to do when you just have like a single color of cardstock. I mean, you could always add extra color to it, but the color of the cardstock changes the color of your ink, right? So again, I'll go ahead and assemble these little orchids, but they're not going to be orchids. So just like that last daffodil where it has that little piece in the center that makes it the daffodil, this has the little piece in the center that makes it the orchid. I'm not going to add that. And these are just going to be nice, fluffy little yellow flowers that I'm going to use to kind of contrast with the red in the previous flowers that I made. So I did that ink blending with all of the different layers. As you can see, I did that all the same way. So this is the second method you could use. So the first method was to cut everything out and then use the washi tape to add ink. This is the second method. You just inlay that back into your negative space and then add the color. Either way works. I find this way for smaller images like this, it works better because it's harder to hold it down and the washi doesn't work as well. I used the washi for the other flowers because they were larger. So you'll find that different methods work for different types of products or images depending on their size, the type, and you'll find what works best for you. So for the leaves, I'm going to show you another little method. These leaves were from, I think they're from the orchid as well. And this time I'm going to add the ink to the paper first, but I'm not going to put my ink pad to the paper. I'm going to use my blending brush because, as I said, I want that variation in color. So all I'm going to do here is add that ink, and I'll concentrate the color in the center or the edge or wherever you want it to be. And I'm just you have to use your die and kind of put it on top and see exactly where you want that color. But you just do it in various places on your white cardstock so that you can cut multiple pieces. So I'll show you what that looks like after you actually run it through with the die. And I showed you the light green there, the frayed leaf. Now this is the evergreen, and you can see you definitely still do get that variation of color. The softer look than just adding a solid color, and that's how it will look like. So now I can also cut some extra leaves out of that piece as well. Now I'm going to do another flower, and I'm using Alta New Coral Bliss. So again, I'm showing you I did the same thing. I concentrated the color in the center and blended it out to a lighter white. And now I'm just going to put my dyes on top of the areas that I concentrated that color in. And it's going to work in the same way as it did with the leaf. I'll cut it out, and it'll pick up that color variation, and I'll have the same effect that I did with the other items, just done in a different way. So you see, there's so many ways that you can do this and get that ink on the white, And if you're one of those people who doesn't have a large collection of colored cardstock, this method works perfectly because we all usually have a nice set of inks, right? And it totally helps you save money on all that extra cardstock and time, because it takes time to pick out all those colors and cut the little pieces and die cut. If you just cut it all out of white, I find it makes it your process a little bit faster. So I just showed you twigs. I'm going to be cutting that out of that paper made with Alta New Espresso colored ink. And now I have these white little leafy pieces. I cut them out already, and I'm just adding a bit of a shadow with some of that silver stone or that grayish ink there. So this is just the white and the grayish tone. It's going to create a lot of contrast with all of those other colors that I have going. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to turn to some more leaves. Now, I actually cut these leaves out of the Alta New Craft a Flower Cosmos set, and I'm using some Bamboo and Shadow Creek ink to create a variation of color, not just tone, on these leaves. So I'm making the edges of the leaves, the ends, that yellowy green color in the bamboo, and then the centers are going to be more of a concentrated green with the Shadow Creek. So you can see once I've got all that ink on there and kind of blended out the way that I like it, once I take it off, the look is absolutely stunning. Now for our card base, I have a 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 piece of DeepSea blue cardstock here. And I'm using the Spellbinders Essential Christmas Greeting set to foil out my sentiment. And I'll be using Spellbinders Aura foil for this. So I thought the Aura was good because it's a nice light gold and it shines various different colors. So it's going to pick up those colors in my bouquet. So I wasn't too specific how I did this. I kind of just eyeballed it, and I think my sentiment is just a little bit off. But when I make my bouquet kind of around the sentiment, I'll just make it kind of offset a little and you won't notice a thing. Now I'm also going to be using the Spellbinders Holiday Floral set because it has the little pine branch and berry branch there. And I'm going to add that with some more foil just to kind of tie in that foil to the rest of the bouquet. And I'm adding it strategically in areas where it's going to kind of show through all of those die cuts. So you can see as I position all of these little flowers on there now, all those little overhanging foil pieces kind of show through, which is my intended purpose. At the end, they won't be as visible as now, but it's going to mesh well with the rest of that bouquet. Now, one point I want to make is that these larger flowers that I made, so not only those, the backs of the daffodils here, the red ones, but the yellow flowers, those are all going to be popped up with foam squares. And the main reason why I'm doing this, and I do recommend doing this if you're going to make something like this, is because then I can stick all of those little twigs and all the little branches and everything underneath it. It's not like I have to cut them. It's not like I have to kind of lift stuff up after it's glued to stick it behind. And because this is such a big floral piece, I tried using the press and seal, but it just is not going to work because there's too many layers here. It's not going to pick everything up. So this is really the best way to go, I would say. Now, I would say the most time consuming part of this card was cutting out all of those die cuts. Actually, the cutting wasn't that bad. It was inking them up, right? And then once I had them inked and assembled, this assembly portion is really what does it for me, and it makes all of that die cutting worth it for me. So I mean, if you feel like this is just way too labor intensive, maybe make your bouquet a little smaller, make it just off in the corner. Then you don't need to make so many pieces like I did. And I understand this design may not be for everyone. Some people may think it's too busy, and at first I thought it was too busy, but once I put it all together, I thought it just came together nicely. And you know, bouquets, they have a ton of stuff going on, tons of colors, tons of things put together that mesh and work well together. And I felt like this came together well in the same way. So I really had to share this one with you. And even though it took me some time to do, it really has like a nice effect once it's all assembled and completed. And I will always make extra pieces because I do decorate my insides, and my insides are always decorated with the extra pieces or pieces that I cut off. So I'm not doing any, extra work that's going to make this process that much longer. The insides really just take me like an extra 5 minutes or so to do. So finally, for the card front, I have to add that bling. I'm using a whole bunch of nail art gems along with some Pink Fresh Studio jewels. First of all, I have these black gems that I'm using as the little berries on those branches. Then I've got some peach fuzz jewels from Pink Fresh Studio, which I'm using as the centers of those red flowers. And then I'm using some Crystal AB nail art gems, and these are all the centers of the yellow flowers, and then just a random spray of random bits of these gems like throughout the background and the bouquet. Now for the inside. Now I'm just going to use the same DeepSea blue cardstock, and I'll also use a piece of Sizzix Opulent gold pearl cardstock just to create like a little bit of a border. And I will add this to the bottom of the inside of my card. So this is just going to create a nice little border that ties in the colors in the background from the front to the inside of the card. Now I chose to have that piece overhang on both sides because I wanted a nice clean cut which lines up exactly with my card on either side of that border. Now I have all these little pieces of extra die cuts that I have on top of the pieces that I cut off from the front, which are mainly those big red flowers. That comes in handy on the inside of my card because I can just kind of have it hanging off the edge in the corner here. And this just creates some nice contrast between the white and the blue, and it ties in the design from the front to the inside of the card. Now on the inside, I'm actually, because it's just a small area, I cut everything and I didn't raise anything up with foam tape because I don't want to create any extra dimension. It might be too thick to put through the mail and it might just get ruined. So now for the inside, I'm using the Altenew Warm Blessings stamp set. I actually masked my stamp and stamped out the printed type with black VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I do this with all of my inside stamps if they have like a scripty and a printed writing because I just find it helps tie in your colors and it just looks a bit more professional. So as you can see, I did the blessings in the Coral Bliss and then the other little sentiment from the Simon Says Stamp Joyful Season stamp set, again in that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. So that makes a very nice sentiment on the inside as well. You don't have to use different colors. You could use the same color throughout. It would still look very pretty. So this is my final card for you. I know it's got a lot going on, but I think that all of those little pieces totally add to the front, and I hope that you guys like it just as much as I do. So if you liked my video, please give me a thumbs up. If you feel like you want to, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell because you'll be notified of further videos that I do post, and I'm constantly posting, sharing new ideas with you. And if you do get a chance, like I said, all of the products are listed in my blog, and my blog is linked in the description below. Just go ahead and click on that. And if you do want to purchase anything, I do ask and would greatly appreciate if you use my affiliate links. All the products listed, for the most part, not all of them, but most of them are linked through affiliate links. And if you buy something, I get just a small commission that's at no extra cost to you at all. And for those of you who have done this previously, I really do thank you. It helps me keep my blog going and buy more products so I can show you more. And yeah, all those good little things. So thank you guys so much for all your support and your continued support in the future. And I hope that you guys have fun making your Christmas cards this weekend and next week, all leading up to Christmas. There's only 16 days left. Actually, wait, sorry, not 16. There's probably less by the time I post this. So have a great weekend, guys, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.